And then the last speaker in this session, Kristof Csillag from Annotate. No, hypothesis, sorry. Kristof.
Okay, so hi, I'm with Hypothesis. So we are working on an annotation system for the web, and we have some proposed solutions to some of these questions. Of course, this is all work in progress on alpha, beta, whatever you want. So I would like to go over some of them. So in the beginning, we started working with Annotator from the Open Knowledge Foundation, and we wanted to develop a little bit different UI, and for that we have to change some of the internals of Annotator. So we did two things. First, we integrated it into our application. That's good, and we also created our fork, and that's not good. And we are going to kill that fork as soon as possible. But right now, that's a separate fork which we are working with, but that's going to go away. So one of the things we changed is that the original Annotator was working only on web documents. And of course, lots of interesting stuff is available in other formats. So we extended it to support generic framework for analyzing other sources. For example, PDF. We can now annotate on PDF using the PDF.js library. And to do that, we have created an abstract interface for dealing with other document types. So if we can, in the future, we hopefully we will be able to support script and maybe Google Docs. It has its share of different problems, but we are going to work around them. And we also support EPUB.js. Okay, so one of the most interesting questions is the anchoring itself. So originally, Annotator was storing the XPath range, specifying which part of the text is annotated for a given annotation. And now we have a different format for storing arbitrary number of selectors for each target. What we call a target is the part of the document we are annotating. It can be a part of the text or part of an image or a generic thing. And for each target, we are describing them with a bunch of selectors. And we have defined a few selector types. One is the range selector, which is the legacy XPath range selector in disguise. And there is a text position selector, which simply specifies if we look at the document as one stream of text, then which character position is the one which we want to annotate. And there is the text quote selector, which has the quote and the prefix and the suffix. So the context is taken into account too. So these are the selectors we are storing inside the annotations. And we have a bunch of strategies which we can use to actually re-anchor these annotations. So the original implementation always tried to apply the save XPath. Of course, if the document changed, that no longer works. Now we have a bunch of different strategies, and we are using all of them and trying to find the best match. So the easy one is simply looking up the text based on the text position. And this involves creating a text representation of the whole document so that we have a unified string, and then we identify the part we want, and then we map it back to the DOM so that we can actually identify the HTML elements involved. So that's the position strategy. And then there is the fuzzy searching strategy, when we search for the prefix and the suffix in the right position, and we can tolerate some level of errors, and then we see what's between the best match for the prefix and suffix, and we compare it with the saved quote, and if it's similar enough, then we have a match. So that's the context-based fuzzy matching, and that is the simple fuzzy matching. If everything else fails, we just fall back to do a fuzzy search for the saved quote and find the best match. So with this we can support document changes and structure changes. So this solves some of the problems, but there are many more. For example, there are many web-based systems, for example PDF.js, where you cannot anchor the annotations right at the start because the HTML is not yet there. So these are using lazy rendering. If there is a multi-page document, they only render the first few pages first. So the rest of the pages will only become available in the DOM as you go along reading. So you cannot anchor the annotations right along. To solve that, we proposing a two-phased anchoring process, which means that first, when the annotations are loaded, we are looking at the document, but we don't have the DOM representation yet. So we are looking at the corpus of the document, which is the text representation, and we determine where the actual annotations should go, but we cannot yet actually put real highlights in the document because those parts of the text are not rendered into the DOM yet. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. So first we determine where the annotations go, that's called an anchor, and then we actually render the highlight when the HTML is really rendered. So moving along to type anchors, the original implementation only supported text annotations, but we can annotate other resources like images. So now we have every anchor and highlight is an object which implement a abstract interface, and we can also add other types. And the last bit of problems is the dynamic anchoring, which means that some documents are static, like for example newspaper articles, but other documents can be dynamic, like if you are looking at the web portal, there might be some content that's changing, or other users are adding content as you go, for example editors. And to solve that, we are trying to observe the HTML document as we go along and change the anchoring based on that. So for example, if a new annotation, so if the content is changed that the annotation can no longer be anchored, then it disappears from the document. And if you edit it back so that it can be reapplied, then it automatically appears on the document. And we also check even if it applies, whether the document, if the quote has changed, we are also showing the changes so that you can see that this was the original text, and now you have this, and this is the difference between them. Another area which was already mentioned is recognizing if the same annotation can also be applied to a different representation. Like, for example, you can have the same PDF and HTML version of the same article, and you have to apply the same annotations to them. So we have a partial solution for that. Okay, and this is the picture about showing how the different parts of the architecture work together, like annotations and anchors and highlights and matching strategies and document access strategies, all that kind of stuff. Those are implementation details. If you are interested, we can talk about that later. And thank you for the attention.
So, questions first to Kristof?
It's Kevin Marks again. So you said if the content changes, then you remove the annotations, but that gives the person being annotated the ability to delete unfavorable comments, which can be problematic.
Oh, well, yes, kind of. Okay, so the question was that there is a comment in the document, and then the author decides to change the document, and then the annotation goes away. So this, in fact, gives him a way to get rid of the unwanted annotation. So first, that's true, but we also support, or we plan to support, showing the so-called orphaned annotations, which are annotations which can no longer be attached back to the document. So these so-called orphan annotations can also be shown in the different view. So they are not completely lost, just not displayed at the right spot in the document. But there is no way around that, except if we can change steps. We can do a snapshot of the original version. Actually, we plan to do that. So we plan to store the snapshot of the original version, and then we can also see the annotation together with that version.
How do you get around copyright issues when you're storing snippets of the content? I mean, that's the approach we've used as well, but you have to be really careful with when you've got thousands of annotations.
Yeah, so right now we don't care. That's it. But in fact, so to be a little bit more specific, we don't pretend to handle that issue. Of course, we care about it, but there is no solution for that. So our software is built so that it can work even without that kind of selector. So there are 3 selector types and 4 strategies. And even if we don't store the so-called text position selector, we can still do the anchoring based on the text position selector, which doesn't have any content, only the character offsets. But we have no built-in solution for creating annotations like that. You have to configure your software to do that.
So I think we can move on to the general discussion about this. Thank you very much, Kristof.